new What's for Dinner video. It has been so long since I've done a What's for Dinner video that the first meal in this video includes some of my Thanksgiving leftovers. Not even Christmas leftovers, we're talking Thanksgiving leftovers, but better late than never, I suppose. Thank you so much for your patience, but let's get into some easy, budget-friendly meals. First up is a cranberry orange chili pork chop. I started out with a pork chop. This was a thick cut one that I keep on hand in the freezer from Costco. After I thawed it, I added some salt, pepper, and onion powder to each side of the pork chop. And then I had gotten this from Trader Joe's. It's the cranberry orange and onion crunchy chili oil. It was so good, and I thought it would be really tasty on pork, and I was correct. So even though this was really simple, I didn't add a lot of stuff to this. It had so much flavor, it was delicious. So I'm sauteing this on both sides. On the first side, I got some of the crunchy chili in there. On the second side, I mainly just got the oil in there to give this a little bit of color as I had it in the pan. But this is not to fully cook it. This is to prep it before I put it in the air fryer. I just wanted a nice color on the outside. I threw it in the air fryer for about 18 minutes at 400, but you just want to do it until it's fully cooked. And this was the last 5 minutes. So 5 minutes before I was ready to take it out, I added some more of that crunchy chili and the oil on the top. I did not have it on there the whole time. I didn't want it to get burned. It did get nice and brown, but it was crunchy and delicious, and I served it with some leftover sweet potatoes and mashed potatoes from Thanksgiving. And if you thought that was simple, wait until you see these teriyaki meatballs. 2 ingredients, teriyaki sauce and frozen meatballs. Also, though, had a lot of flavor. So I had this teriyaki Kinder's marinade sauce in my refrigerator from when my mom had been in town. And I believe it was pork chops that we had this on the first time around. And I thought this would be good to use up some of those frozen meatballs that a while back, it might have even been my last What's for Dinner, but that was a while back. I know I had some feelings about these meatballs. I did not like them in spaghetti and meatballs, but in a recipe like this, they were perfect. So all I did was coat some of those frozen meatballs in teriyaki sauce in the slow cooker. I let it cook for about 2 hours, and that sauce got nice and thick and the flavor absorbed into those meatballs. And this was so great for meal prep. So I had these for dinner on this night, and then I had a few days of meal prepped lunches. I made this with some brown rice and broccoli and portioned it out into my dinner for this night, and then a few different containers to bring to work. And not only did this taste delicious, it smelled so good. Every time I heated it up at work over the course of the multiple days I had it, people were like, "What is that? It smells amazing." So, highly recommend this if you are in need of a very, very simple dinner. Now, the one thing I will say though, with these frozen meatballs, you don't want to cook them all day. So this would be great for a busy weekend, or if you're home during the day and can put this on 2 hours before dinner time, that would be a great option as well. Simple, easy meals. This is the theme if you haven't picked up on that. This is using convenience food. Again, this is some pierogi. So I had onions to use up, and I had picked up some frozen pierogi when it was on sale at the grocery store. So I chopped up my onion. This is about half of an onion, and I sauteed it in butter with some salt and pepper and got those nice and brown. And I love caramelized onion. It's been a while since I've had really any caramelized onion dishes on this channel. I used to make them all the time, and I really need to get back into making more of my French onion things that I enjoy, like my French onion soups. But for now, we've got some onion pierogi, so I did get a little bit of a caramelized onion fix here. So once my onions were nice and brown, I added more butter back in, and then my pierogis from not exactly frozen. I have noticed that I don't like the texture of them if I bring them directly into the pan. I parboiled them. So instead of cooking them all the way through in boiling water, I boiled them for maybe a minute to 2 minutes just to get the outside soft so that when I put them in the pan, they had the consistency and the texture that I liked. Had these with a little bit of sour cream on top. I'm pretty sure I also had a side salad, but I didn't get a picture of it. And finally for this video, spaghetti and meatballs. I make my spaghetti sauce and meatballs in big batches, and I almost always have it in the freezer. This was my first time making this since moving back to North Carolina, so I definitely needed to stock up. I do have a full video that breaks down measurements of things and just the whole how to make each of these things step by step, and I will link that in the description box below. But I did also want to show it in this video a little bit because I've never done this in the slow cooker before. Normally I have my big sauce pot and it stays on the stovetop all day long, but now I have a larger slow cooker and I decided to see if that would work out well, and it did. It comes out exactly the same without it sticking to the bottom quite as much if you don't stir it every so often. I did stir this from time to time, but I didn't need to stir it as much as I do when I did it on the stovetop. So what's going on here so far? I started out with some extra virgin olive oil and garlic. You want to make sure though you have all of your cans, or at least one can of the sauce, open before you put your garlic in. Otherwise that garlic is gonna burn if you start it. So I've got 3 cans of tomato sauce, 3 cans of tomato puree, and this was a first. I added 1 can of crushed tomatoes just for kicks this time around. And then once all of that is added, and I've also added a can of water, which in my original video of this, you can see, I believe, exactly how I transfer the water from can to can to can. So I'm only putting in 1 can of water, but getting all of that leftover sauce out of all of the cans. And then adding in my seasonings, which I still use my dad's very specific measurements that he had for this recipe, which were you cover half the top with basil, half the top with parsley, and the whole top with oregano. When my mom makes this, she uses actual measurements, but this was a recipe from my dad's side of the family, so I like sticking to his measurement style of half of it with this, half of it with that, and cover the whole thing with the other. So not too many specific measurements going on here. The one thing I did measure, but I still went a little bit under, was sugar. I added in a little less than half of a cup of sugar, cut down the acidity. This is a nice sweeter spaghetti sauce. If you're not a fan of sugar in your sauce, you don't need to add it. I have done it at times where I use less. I've also made it once with stevia when I had to use up stevia, and it tasted slightly different, but not overly so. And then to this, oh yeah, I added my crushed tomatoes after all the rest of the stuff because I wasn't sure I was going to have room in the slow cooker for it. So I added the crushed tomatoes and then a little bit of water to rinse out that can. And I put a lid on this and let it get a head start on cooking because I didn't already have my onion and green pepper. When I had gone shopping leading up to this, they didn't have a good selection at the store of onions and green peppers. So I was hoping, really hoping that this day I'd be able to find what I needed, and luckily I did. So I've got my onion and green bell pepper that I have processed together in the food processor. And then I'm going to throw that in there to cook for the rest of the day. Also not on video, I did put 2 bay leaves in this too. And then when I went to portion them out, I only ever found 1. So at some point, when I go through the stock in my freezer, one of them will have a bay leaf in it. It's fine, we'll just pull it out when we find it. This is a pretty smooth sauce. I know it looks chunky here because it's all concentrated on the top, but in the end, when it is fully cooked, this is not an overly chunky sauce. I know some people like theirs to be nice and smooth. You can even hit this with the immersion blender if you want it even smoother than it already is, but all of that onion and green bell pepper cooks down pretty well to give you a nice smooth sauce. Let it cook all day long. If you're doing this on the stovetop, you do need to stir it pretty often, but if you're not doing it on the stovetop, if you're doing it in the crock pot like this, I only stirred it maybe once every 2 hours. Next up is the meatballs. I was using the meatball meatloaf burger blend that my store had. Some places call this meatloaf mix. Some places call it ground pork, although if it's ground pork, I believe it's just beef and pork. I don't think it has the veal. And this is also the only instance that I use anything with a veal in it. And I used 2 pounds of this. So this is a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio for the meatballs. So with the 2 pounds of meat, it is the 2 pounds of meat, 2 eggs, 2 cups of water, and 2 cups of breadcrumbs. I do use gloves when I mix up my meatballs, or if I make meatloaf, I use gloves for that too. But growing up, my dad always said the secret ingredient is the dirt under your fingernails. I have German dirt issues though, so for me, gloves it is. Even though these gloves did not want to stay on my hands when I was trying to do this, I kept having to readjust them over and over. But I'm going to mix this all together. I did let it sit for a few minutes to really just meld everything together, and then scooped this out to get consistency with the size of the meatballs. If you have one of the little scoopers that you use to scoop cookies, those work really well if you're going for consistency and size, or you can measure them out by hand. And then into my pan, because I bake these, not fry them, I add a little bit of water at the bottom, and then on a roasting pan, I put all of my meatballs, 375, in the oven for about 40 to 50 minutes until they are nice and brown and done. And this is the final product over my spaghetti, but I will also use these for other dishes too. They're great to have on hand in the freezer, and I did get a picture of my side salad with that one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you consider giving it a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button down below if you haven't already. I just want to take a moment to say welcome to all of my new subscribers. There are a lot of you here, and if you are new here, my name is Stephanie. I do grocery hauls, what's for dinner videos, the occasional vlog, and travel content. So if that sounds good to you, I really hope you'll consider sticking around. I did take a trip in December that I've got to post. I still have more moving content to post, and I'm telling you, it's gonna happen. It is going to happen this year. I'm coming up in a few weeks on 3 years of this channel, so thank y'all for watching. Thank you for your patience with my inconsistencies, and hopefully I will have more of these What's for Dinner videos coming at you soon. Thanks for watching.